Welcome back to Speak Out with Christine Yeargin. I am your host, and today we have on NBA player Jonathan Isaac. A lot of you probably know who he is just because he is in the NBA, but also those of you who don't pay attention to sports probably know who he is as well, because if you'll rewind with me and remember back when the BLM hysteria was happening and a lot of athletes were kneeling during the national anthem in protest, he is the only athlete on his team, and I think even within the NBA at all at that time, who chose to stand during the national anthem. He did not kneel. He did not put on the Black Lives Matter t-shirt like the rest of them. And it hit the news everywhere. There were people who hated him and he got a lot of negative feedback from it. And there were people who loved him and supported him and shot his jersey sales up to #2 because of it. So depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you either love him or hate him. But he is such a good human being that the fact that anybody could give him any sort of negative backlash is like wild to me. But he plays for the NBA, obviously. He also is an author. He wrote a book called Why I Stand. It is his story of his life, his upbringing, and obviously his beliefs and why he chose to stand. And since then, he has also founded Unitis, which is a sports and athletic apparel line. You can see these shoes in the background. Those are my son's Judah ones from Unitis. They're pretty big. Those are not mine. And the sweatshirt that I'm wearing for those who are watching is also a Unitis sweatshirt. It is also my son's, so it's kind of oversized, but it's super comfy. We have matching sweats that go with it. But he is a phenomenal human being. The Unitis is for Christians. These shoes have Bible verses on them. They're the first NBA signature shoe with Bible verses on them. And so we get to share our beliefs while wearing them, or we get to be proud of the brand that we're spending money with, because we're not spending money with people who tear down our beliefs and actively work and donate against them. So without further ado, I think you guys are going to love Jonathan Isaac as much as I am and look up to him as well. Well, Jonathan, this has been a long time in the making. I asked you I think a year ago to come on the show and figuring out your schedule. I remember back in April, we almost got you, but there was some reason I couldn't do it. I don't remember what I was doing, but I couldn't do it. But I'm finally getting to have you on the podcast and chat with you. So I'm so excited to have you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. I know we've connected a bunch through IG, and you've been an amazing supporter, and I love everything that you're doing as well.
I mean, speaking of support, I don't know if you see
Exactly.
the sweatshirt. Exactly. We've got the shoes propped up. My husband brought the shoes in the background that you sent to my son. And we have your book over here. So,
oh, wow.
This is the Jonathan Isaac studio now. So I want to go a little bit kind of in chronological order.
Okay.
Can you give me just a brief background on your upbringing? A lot of people know who you are today, what you do today, what you're standing for today, but who was Jonathan Isaac growing up?
Yeah, so I started in Bronx, New York. My dad was a Holy Ghost roller. We were in church, it felt like every day. We had to memorize whole psalms and recite them before the church, the whole nine. But for me, it was more so just like a tradition thing. I didn't quite understand what a relationship with Christ looked like. I moved from Bronx, New York to Naples, Florida when I was 10. My parents had split up, and I went from a predominantly Black community to a predominantly white community, and I really struggled. My nickname was Ethiopia coming up. And so I developed a great deal of just anxiety and self-insecurity about who I was. And basketball started to fill that void for me. And when I started to play really well and become really good at it, the girls wanted to hang out with me. The guys wanted me to be on their team, and I made friends. And but it became this roller coaster of I really don't want to play bad, and so I had a lot of anxiety before games, and anxiety kind of plagued me up till high school, college. I was the #1 player in the state of Florida at Florida State, and
Go
behind the
Noles.
scenes I was on. Oh yeah, absolutely. Behind the scenes I was on anxiety medication, and nobody really knew except a trainer and a teammate of mine, and so I was working through that, still trying to figure out my identity, and I had it all kind of wrapped up in basketball. And when I would play really good, I would feel really good about myself. When I didn't play well, I didn't feel good about myself. And it wasn't until I actually got drafted to the NBA, I got drafted to the Orlando Magic, and I met a guy on an elevator while I was kind of living my life. And I'm like, look, I want to experience everything that the NBA has to offer. I'm doing all the things. And I meet this guy on the elevator, and he says to me, I can tell you how to be great. And I said, how? And he said, you have to know Jesus. And that was the start of where I am today. I started hanging out with that guy some more, and he started to teach me about what a relationship with Christ was really like. And it started to deal with my anxiety and my fear. And to this day, I still battle with it, and but I've learned how to overcome it through Christ. And a lot of the stands that you've seen me take and other people have seen me take has been none other because of a growing relationship with Christ that has dealt with a lot of the fear that I've struggled with my entire life. But that man that I met in the elevator is now my pastor.
Oh, I love that.
I met my wife in the church that I started going to that he pastors. Now I just celebrated my third year anniversary. I've got a baby girl named Naomi, and so everything is great. We're going into season 8 now in the NBA. You said it. I was able to write a book by the grace of God and start a brand, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But
Yeah.
that's kind of my story.
No, I love that. It's funny. A couple of things. So you're saying all of this stuff about, you were finding your identity in your sport, essentially. If you didn't play well, you felt bad about who you were as a person.
Right.
And obviously God brought you out of that, which is fantastic. And I love that you're saying that because my son has experienced a little bit of that. He's 16. He plays high school football. He's a really excellent athlete. I know every parent says that, but
Yeah, for sure. I
he
believe it.
actually is a really, really good athlete and fantastic football player. But he had an injury earlier this year, and you know how that goes. You don't get to play, you get down in the dumps. And I would always remind him, I said, football is not your identity. Like, you
Wow.
are Noah, you are a child of God. And reminding him that like he shouldn't find his worth in football. I know it brings a lot
Exactly.
of joy. I know it brings a lot of fun and excitement. And, it's what you've worked so hard for. You guys train all the time, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, any sport. So I can see that people want to be out there. But also, when you started coming out and speaking out about different things, I told my dad that I was going to have you on the podcast. I said, "Do you know who this Jonathan Isaac guy is?" And he's like the biggest Florida State fan ever. I hope you're listening, Dad. I'm sure he is. But he's like, yeah, he played for Florida State. What do you mean, do I know who Jonathan Isaac is? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't know. I mean, obviously you went to college somewhere, but my dad, if you could just shout out Mark Rosasco right now, he'd probably have,
Shout out Mark. You said Rosasco?
yep. There.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your support, man.
My dad's a big fan. But so you obviously started coming into your faith a little bit more. You grew up in church, but you met this pastor in an elevator, came into your faith a little bit more, and it has changed who you are as a person and how you kind of view the world. You're viewing the world through a biblical lens
Right.
versus your own lens. And so as an athlete, this is a question actually my son submitted, which I love. As an athlete, how do you put God first?
Oh wow. I would say it starts outside of the game. Like I think, even the term athlete, again, it speaks to what we do, but it's not who we are. Like I have found, that personal relationship with Christ that has spoken to, who I am as an individual, me finding my identity in him granting me peace and comfort and confidence about who I am, and that it automatically lends to who I am as an athlete. I've seen the more that I rest in who he is, the more that I rest in my identity and my validation not coming from the world around me. It's not coming from people. My validation comes from him and my confidence comes from him. I play even better, on the court. All of that is on display because now it's not something that I have to do. It's something that I get to do for his honor and glory. And it's a battle. Don't get me wrong. It's not something that I've gotten down to a science at all, but I understand that the more that I pour into this relationship in my personal life, the more that it translates to who I am on the court and I'm sure on the field for your son as well. So I would say it being an athlete is one thing. It's what we do, but a relationship with Christ speaks to who you are, and that is the foundation of who you are. Who you are, your personality, your just everything about you, and
Yeah.
it has paid dividends on the court for me.
So this is one that I'd love for you to answer because I know as athletes, like you mentioned before, you were a good basketball player. All the girls wanted to hang out with you. All the guys wanted to be your friend. In the world of the NBA or the NFL or MLB, there's partying, there's women, there's
Right.
all sorts of things. How do you avoid that temptation?
To the best of my ability. It's definitely gotten easier as I've gotten kind of older in the league and whatnot. But it's a battle. I would say one, just having the right people around me. My pastor is huge in my life. Obviously, I have a wife today and have accountability and structure around me that keeps me, from the things of this world in terms of the outside world and whatnot. But it's difficult. I think just for me, it's been, staying in the word, staying connected, staying grounded, and knowing where my altar is in terms of when I get back from the road and stuff like that, I go to church. I go to church as much as I can personally. And so having that foundation, having the connections and the people around me that keep me accountable, has paid dividends in my life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So in 2020, we witnessed a lot in our country for multiple reasons. There was tons of stuff going on in 2020, I feel like, and you got thrust into the spotlight even more so than just being an NBA player. Not just being, obviously, that's a huge feat in and of itself, but you know what I mean. You got thrust in the spotlight even more. Tell me a little bit about that, what happened, and kind of the outcome of it.
Yeah, so that was the aftermath of the George Floyd situation and his tragic death. So we the NBA had this thing called the NBA bubble, and it was kind of during COVID and everything. So they brought everything into the bubble, and it was kind of on the heels of what had happened with George Floyd, and it was everywhere. All of the corporations and the NBA kind of took hold of it. Black Lives Matter was on the court, and it became this thing that was on everybody's minds. It was a topic of our country at the time. And so for me, being a Christian, I tried my best to figure out what did all of this mean, and how was the right way to see it through the lens of not just being a Black African American, but through the lens of being a child of God. And so what I landed on, I think early on before we went into the bubble, my pastor was preaching, and it was during the time of riots and a lot of things were going on, and he talked about the time where Jesus was getting captured by the Roman guard, and Peter cuts off the guy's ear, and Jesus said, if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. And one of the things my pastor said was, if we walk into this moment kind of in our nature, which is, to repay evil for evil and to seek revenge and to be angry, then we're going to get the same results that we've always gotten. But if we walk into this with love and forgiveness and grace and, through the lens of Christ to be Christ-like, then we could have real change between white and Black people alike. And so I took that understanding into the bubble with me. And once we got there, a team had already knelt before us. Team had already knelt, so it was our turn to play. And it was like, what are we gonna do? And we had this team meeting, and it turned out to be just the players. That everybody left and said, "You guys decide what you're gonna do." And everybody was like, "Look, we don't have a choice. We're gonna
Yeah.
kneel. It's just what we have to do. A team had already knelt before us. If we don't, then we're gonna look like we're not for the movement and everything." And one of my teammates is like, "Jonathan, what are you gonna do?"
So they
I
already
was
knew.
like,
They like to ask you something.
they was like, Jonathan, what are you gonna do? And I said, fellas, I'm not gonna kneel and I'm not gonna wear the t-shirt. And it was like, oh my gosh, here we go, with the Jesus stuff. And they asked me why, and I said, man, I can't throw stones from a glass house. I was just like, I've fallen short of the glory of God. And I am in no position to point fingers. It's not that I don't believe that what happened was wrong. I see the problem. I just believe that there is a greater solution than adding to the division by kneeling for the national anthem or co-signing an organization like the Black Lives Matter organization that I just didn't agree with fundamentally. And so I decided I'm going to take this moment to not go with that solution, but to use my own, which is to share the gospel and the love of Christ. That says if we could love each other the way that Christ loves us, which is in spite of our sin, in spite of our shortcomings, then we
Amen.
could have real change. And so that's what I went with. And I remember being on the phone with my pastor that night, and I'm telling him, man, you don't know what's gonna happen here. Like I'm gonna be a sellout. I'm gonna lose my black card. Like this is gonna be really bad. Um, uh, I hadn't signed my contract extension yet at the time, and so yeah, I recognized how drastic of a decision I was making, and I knew it was gonna be something that I was gonna get a lot of backlash and everything. And he said to me, "You cannot stand for God and God not stand for you."
Amen.
And that was kind of like, okay, all right, I'm gonna do it. And obviously there was a ton of backlash. Of course, I was expecting it, but the amount of encouragement and people who said, I understand what you're trying to say, and I agree with that message, and I'm gonna lead with love and grace from both the Black and white community was astronomical, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I remember it before we even connected on social media. I remember seeing that and thinking how powerful, just the image was, just seeing it one man standing alone, willing to stand for what he believes in, and not continue this division that we were seeing a lot of. And I thought it was so incredibly powerful. And I thought to myself, I was like, this is an athlete that I could have my son look up to. Like, this is somebody that I think is a role model for young men everywhere to stand up for what they believe in, even when you stand alone. And but I'd like to know a little bit about like the fundamentals of BLM that you disagree with that caused you not to stand in the first place.
Yeah,
Or
so
excuse
I
me,
think
caused you not to kneel.
right. So early on for me, it was a lot of the tone and the rhetoric of the message. I thought that um, and even going back to the riots and how everything kind of turned up, I didn't agree with the position of the movement. It felt like it was very antagonistic and angry and bitter to a degree, and all things that I understood, right? It wasn't that I'm looking at them and saying, oh, you're wrong in terms of the feeling of anger or the feeling of injustice and things like that. It's just that I didn't agree with their method or form of uh, how to change it and how to make things better. And so that was the big thing for me. And then also I'm learning more about their organization in terms of I think their founders were very Marxist and
Yeah.
had a lot of different things on their website that they kind of cleaned up and stuff like that I heard. So I was always weary of them at first, and then even in having conversations with people who were a part of the movement, I would say, hey, this is my perspective, and it was kind of like, yeah, that's not the perspective that we're going with at this point in time. And so, yeah, I just didn't get down with it. And then to see how everything kind of went on behind the scenes with the money and things like that, I felt a little vindicated, by not, offering my support to them. So that was that.
Yeah, no, good for you. They obviously stand for the abolition of the nuclear family, which we
Right.
know is biblical. They are pro-abortion. They are Marxist, like you said. So there's a lot of things that don't align with the Bible in general. So when you got this all happened, you stood, you get back to the locker room. What did your teammates say? Were they like, "Oh my gosh, you're an idiot," or were they like, "I can't believe," like what happened there in the locker room?
Man, a little bit of that. It was after the game, I kind of secluded myself, and just kind of went back to my room and kind of just stayed there the whole, whole time my phone was blowing up and everything. And it was the next day we had practice, and I go to practice, and we're heading back to the hotel now from practice, and all of us get a text to our phone, "Hey, team only meeting when we get back to the hotel." And so I'm getting off the bus, and one of my teammates like nudges me, like, "Look, just a heads up, this is about you." And
Mm.
so I get into the team meeting, and it's guys were very emotional, and again, it was something that I understood. Like I wanted them to know that I was not protesting you. I was just saying I have a different solution. And so there were a lot of guys who felt really strongly about the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that was going on. They were a part of the marches and all that stuff. And so they were angry and upset and spoke their piece. And I tried my best to say, hey, I respected your decision to kneel. I'm just asking for that same respect in return. I don't hate you. I'm not against the movement in any way. I'm Black myself. I
Yeah.
just have a different perspective on a solution that goes past racism, but actually speaks to the hearts of men where the real problem lies. And so that was that, and we kind of left it at that. Some players were like, "Hey, like we know Jonathan. We're not going to sit here and act like we don't know who he is and his character and what he stands for and whatnot. This isn't something that he's doing to steal spotlight or anything like that. That's just not him." And so we were able to cordially say, "Hey, this is a situation." And they asked me, they said, "Look, are you going to stand again?" And I said, "Oh man," I said, "I am, I am," and that was that.
So did it keep like how long did they continue to kneel and you continued to stand? I guess I don't like after that initial time when there was this massive
Yeah, there,
media
there, there
coverage
was there, there
kept
was one
happening?
more game.
Okay.
There was one more game. And that game I actually got injured. I tore my ACL that game. The game after the initial stand.
Yeah, so okay, so was there anybody who behind the scenes like agreed with you was like, "Hey, I wish I could stand too," but
Oh yeah, oh my gosh. There was a ton. There were a ton of people that were just, it's hard to speak to now, the pressure, the social pressure that was happening at the time in terms of, white and black athletes were like, look, even though I disagree, it seems like it's more beneficial for me to just get through this moment than it is for me to make a scene. And that was what a lot of people went with. And I
Mhm.
and even I understand that notion. I really do because of what was going on. People were getting canceled. People were, if you even had a thought, you were a racist or you supported racism or you were, a white supremacist, even if you were black, if you had any questions about, hey, this might not be the way to go about getting the change that we're seeking.
So something I want people to know before you stood, before all of this happened, before the media and the press got a hold of it, you hadn't even re-signed your contract. Your contract was up for renewal, and you went into
Right.
this knowing that the pushback could be so severe that you might not get a renewed contract, and you did it anyway. I think that is really powerful, and and says how strong your convictions really are, and encourages other people to do the same. I mean, if you can do it with NBA contract on the line, I feel like we can do it in these little small increments in our everyday lives.
For sure, absolutely. And again, if it wasn't for my pastor, that was one of the things that I said to him. I was like, "Look, this is the situation. I am up for a contract extension. If I do go through with this, there's a chance that I don't be in the league anymore. Who
Yeah.
knows? Especially if people just don't understand what it is that I'm trying to say. And I think that because people did understand what I was trying to say and they saw the sincerity and not boasting, but the humility of my position in terms of it's not about being against anybody. I'm just offering another perspective and solution to the issues. It was able to kind of scoot by. And so he said to me, "You can't stand for God and God not stand for you." That was the answer to a lot of my fears.
Yeah. So, okay. So you push back on that. The BLM stuff happens, and then the jab stuff happens. I don't want to get too much into that because I don't want this podcast taken down. If you say, if you get into the medical stuff, sometimes
Yeah,
they do that. Um, and you have a lot of things that you're passionate about. Are you also pro life?
absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So, how familiar are you with Margaret Sanger?
I've heard about her. She is the I want to use this word correctly, eugenics.
She was a eugenicist, yeah. So she was the founder of Planned Parenthood, and she
Gotcha.
was a eugenicist. She was a racist. She thought we should essentially kill babies who were had deformities or were slow, or anybody who was in poverty, or minorities. So there's a quote that we have of hers. She says, "We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social services backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through religious appeal. We don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. Excuse me, we don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members." So Planned Parenthood was founded on these racist ideals. And today
Right.
we're seeing, in cities like New York, more black babies are aborted than born alive. Where is the outcry for black preborn lives?
Yeah, I would say it is it's a mind issue in terms of it's become so casual and familiar with just life. Now it is so celebrated, between the Democratic Party and a lot of things that are going on. It's celebrated to a point where there is no taboo to the subject anymore, or there's no need because of how far removed from everything it's become. You're talking about how far removed it is from the origin. There is no taboo about it anymore. There's no conversation about what it used to be. It's about what it is now, and it's framed in that kind of women empowerment uh, structure and whatnot. So there's no need to think about what it used to be for a lot of people. And I just think that it's a mindset thing for me. A few years ago, it wouldn't have been an issue for me. It wasn't an issue for me. Just being transparent. When I was in high school, I bought a Plan B for a girl, because of a situation that I was in, and my mind has been renewed because of Christ at the end of the day, and I now have a formed understanding that life comes from God, and we do not have the authority or should have the authority to take that life, regardless of what color you are, regardless of what background you are. I understand the significance from an African American's perspective because of the way that it was started. But in just today, I don't believe that it is a right to have an abortion or to take a life outside of extreme circumstances and whatnot. So yeah, so I just it's a different conversation today because of how normalized it's become, and I think that the way that we combat it is through outreach and evangelism at the end of the day. Like I said, if it was not for me adopting a new belief system that changed the way that I thought, and ultimately it changed the way I thought about abortion because my mind was changed. In the same way, a lot of people need to be, evangelized and have that outreach to them to learn about, hey, this is how it started. This is what it was really about. Um, this is what's happening in New York. This is all these different things are important, and that's why I appreciate what you guys do, and it is ministry, to get out into the streets and talk to people about what this means and what the significance of it. But ultimately, people need changed minds to think differently.
Yeah, what's crazy to me is that the roots of Planned Parenthood being these racist roots, it's still there because they still set up shop in minority areas. The overwhelming majority of Planned Parenthoods are in minority areas, and so they prey on these women who, when you look at the reasons that people abort, it's typically finances are the number one.
Right.
It can be an abusive partner, it can be being a single parent, finishing college. There's all of these reasons, and to me, all of those things are fixable. Nobody says, I can't afford this, I'm going to have an abortion for fun. I mean, aside from somebody who's maybe very, very, very dark and evil.
Right. Exactly.
But usually they feel backed into a corner that they don't want to have to be in anyway. And that's something that I do. I work for Students for Life. Obviously, that's who puts this podcast out. But I also have a nonprofit called Be Their Village, or I guess it's more of a social media movement. And we do baby showers for these women because this pressure of
Awesome.
finances, especially in this economy, feels so heavy for them. And we, provide them the stroller, the car seat, the crib, the diapers and wipes for a year, clothes for a year, all of these things that kind of help them walk into motherhood on the right foot, because no woman wants to actually be backed into this corner that she feels forced to make a decision that she doesn't want to have to make to in the first place. If we alleviate these financial pressures, if we alleviate the fact that she needs daycare for her child so she can finish college, most often these women will choose life. And what is more pro-woman than helping them alleviate these things that are making them feel burdened in the first place?
I not to cut you off, but I absolutely love that, and I think that that is the way um, a lot of the conversation should be framed going forward. Because what usually happens is, because like you said, it's not justifying it, right? It's not saying that it's right because of the situation that these people are in, but the situation that they're in has a lot to do with why they're making the decisions that they're making. And now, once you've made that decision, in order for you to feel okay and to continue to move forward, you have to find a way to justify it. And so, what a lot of people who are pro-abortion have done is giving people reasons to justify the act, which is it's women empowerment, it's all these different things, so you don't have to deal with the guilt and the shame that comes with it. And a lot of women still do. It's still something that they carry with them for a really, really long time. Men as well, who are part of these situations that that go through it. But I think framing it as in, there are a lot of ways to create solutions. Obviously, we want to try our best to stop the act, but addressing the problems head on where they are, which is a lot of times finances and just people not being able to get a hold of resources. And if they were to go through with it, they would be at a place of not being able to take care of the child that they're bringing into the world.
Right. And that's the most pro woman thing that we can do, I think, really. And what people don't realize, it's very easy to be pro abortion and say, this is women's rights, my body, my choice, whatever euphemism they want to use for this silly lie that they tout. But it's so easy to say, hey, there's an abortion clinic over here on this corner, just go down there, take care of it, while you're sitting on your couch eating your Doritos and watching
Exactly.
TV. But it takes a lot
Exactly.
of time and effort to pour into these women. Hey, do you need somebody to go to this appointment with you because you're alone and you feel a little bit scared? Do you need somebody to help fundraise for you? Or do you need somebody to help find resources in your area that we can connect you to? That takes a lot of time and effort.
It
You
does.
have to
It does.
really love somebody to be able to pour into them in that way. And I feel like we don't see that necessarily from the other side. It's funny. I often ask, I get, of course, people who troll me all the time and, say that I'm a hateful bigot because I want women supported and I want them to be able to have their babies. And I always say, you're right. Like, there's a lot of financial pressure these women are facing. We're doing a fundraiser for one. Do you want to donate? And they disappear. They ghost me. They block me
Absolutely
immediately.
not.
They're like, no, I don't want
Wow.
to lift a finger. I just want to point mine at you, which is really sad to see because there's so many beautiful ways that we can be supporting these women that they don't have to feel backed into that. So you said earlier that you've had a baby, which is fantastic. Congratulations
Yeah.
on becoming a father. Has being a
Thank you so much.
father made you more pro-life?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think walking through the process of childbirth, the 9 months, and going to the ultrasounds and seeing the baby grow, and even how developed they are at 6 weeks, and how they continue to progress. it really is a beautiful thing, and it does suck that there, like to your point again, that there are people who are in these situations who cannot enjoy the process because of those other factors, and are contemplating, some of the hardest and most regrettable decisions that they'll make in their lives. And so it's a beautiful thing, but to your point, it's also made me recognize how to be an ally at the same time, where it's not just shouting from the rooftops, abortion is wrong, which it is, but finding ways to be a part of the solution has been really cool for me as well. And so that's philanthropy, that's coming on podcasts like this to talk about it and to kind of
Right.
get the subject out there. And I think more people on our side, and I'm not saying that they don't, because a lot of times the work that you're doing and the work that a lot of other people are doing goes um, unheard and not advocated for because you're on the other side of the aisle in the conversation. But I think us continuing to come together and celebrate the work that you guys are doing and allowing more people to get in part of it. And I think a lot of the people, again, that are going through these situations, the more that they're able to connect with you guys and to hear that this is the solutions that we're offering, they would understand that these people who are telling me to go in this direction, they truly don't have my best interest at heart.
Yeah.
They don't. They don't care about my baby. They don't care about the situation that I'm in. But these other people out here who are working and advocating for baby showers and things like that, they actually care. They actually love me, and we'll see more people turn, to the right way.
Yeah, I think so too. I try to highlight as much of it as I can. I was actually at the hospital last night, dropping off a car seat and a stroller for mom. We were supposed to do a baby shower for, but her baby decided to come early. And I was like, well, you need the
Amazing.
car seat to be able to leave from the hospital. They make you have a car seat. So I got to go up there and meet the baby and do that, which is so beautiful. And then all of this brings me into Unitis, which is you started a brand. I am wearing one of your sweatshirts. You have a t-shirt on right now.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Unitis, what it means, why you started it, and what the future for Unitis is.
Yeah. So a little bit of backstory. I was signed to Nike during the time I was in the bubble, and after I got injured, they decided not to re-sign me. It's all love. I get it. But I went to my pastor, the same guy, and I said, "Hey, this is the situation, and I'll probably try to figure out, going with Adidas or somebody when I come back to playing." And he said, "Why don't you make your own shoe?" And it was kind of like, "Are you crazy? Like, athletes don't do that. There's the brands for a reason." And he said, "You should make your own." And so I started to go down the path and, calling my agent and figuring stuff out. And it was kind of like God just started putting the pieces together. And then my pastor also called me shortly after, like, "Hey, we started talking about why just create a shoe? Why not create an entire sports and apparel company that we could be able to stand for our values and what it is that we believe in?" And he calls me back and he's like, "Hey, I just got out of prayer. You should name it Unitus." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Okay, gang, I love it." And yeah, so it's just been I know what it feels like to be the only one in the room who believes something or thinks a certain way, and I understand how frightening and daunting that is, and how terrifying it can be. But in having a brand, there's so many people who come from different backgrounds who share the same values and beliefs, and now they have a point of contact and connection to say, "Hey, if you're wearing a United shirt, I know that you stand for these certain things, and I know that this is the type of person you are, regardless of your background, regardless of where you come from, regardless of the color of your skin." And that's what I want. I want believers, again, from all different backgrounds, to be encouraged in who we are as believers and to take pride in it. And I think having a brand that's mainstream, that's it's out there on an NBA player's feet, saying, "I stand for these things." It's about honoring God at the end of the day, and in all of these different ways. And so that's what Unitas is. Our motto is redefine greatness. Because at the end of the day, the world has a standard of greatness. And a lot of times we look up to that and we idolize these people who are said to be great in the world. But true greatness is those who honor God. And that's what it's about.
No, I love that. And you have sweatshirts, you have sweat or like whole sweat outfits, the
Yeah.
matching sweats. We have the sweatpants that go with this. We're in South Alabama right now. We
Yeah.
moved.
No worries. it's,
It's a
it's
little bit
hot.
hot, so I'm not wearing them. But you've got shoes, you've got t-shirts, you've got kids
Yeah.
clothes, you've got hats. I mean, you guys keep expanding with what you have, right?
Yeah, what's great is that we started with basketball, the original Judah one. It was the first NBA signature sneaker with visible Bible verses on the outside. We started with
So
that.
good.
That's one of the pairs that you have behind you. By God's grace, it did amazing. And then we've gone to the low tops in the kind of the same shoe, but just a low top version. And now, towards the end of October, we're going to be dropping our first trainer. which is outside of basketball. It's just an everyday. You can run in it, you can work out in it, you can just wear it out and
Is
about.
it
They're amazingly
unisex?
comfortable. Yes, unisex will have 6 different colorways. I think 3 of them are predominantly female colorways and stuff. So
Okay.
it's I think it's going to be big. The verse on the back is 1 Samuel 2:30. It says, "He who honors God, God will honor." And our kind of mantra for it is honor God with every step. And so that's that. We're excited about it, and to step outside of the basketball realm and kind of come into the everyday thing. And we'll be dropping new merch around that as well. And so yeah, so we're expanding, like you said. We just had our first university partnership with
I
Regent
just saw
University.
that on
Their
your Instagram.
their
Congratulations.
men's and thank you so much. Their men's and women team are going to be wearing the Judah ones, and so it's been amazing to see it grow. And my hope is huge in terms of my vision. I want to go from basketball to football to baseball to the whole nine, and be able to go to little kids and infants and the whole thing. But it just takes time,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and everybody's support means so much, and it helps us get there. And so I've just been excited about seeing how God has been using it. I've heard so many amazing stories of people being able to minister because of somebody asked about the shoes and seeing the verse on the back, or just people being encouraged that they're wearing the word of God with them wherever they go.
Yeah, this is so amazing. And I know you just said football and you're talking about other sports. Listen, if you need somebody to try out the football shoes, I'll throw them on my kid because I can't tell you
Yeah.
how quick I want to stop buying Nike cleats. Like, I'm so sick of
I
having to spend my
got you.
money with Nike or anybody else. If you have Unitis cleats, those will be the first ones that we buy.
One day. I
Um,
appreciate that.
no,
But that's
absolutely.
that other point too of people wanting to spend their dollars with a company that supports who they are and their values, and so I completely co-sign that.
So I've heard maybe a little bird about maybe something happening with a potential pro-life something or other.
Oh,
Are
how
we allowed to speak about anything,
yeah, we can,
or
we can, we can, we
can
can,
I
we
advocate for
can.
that?
Yes, you can. So, yeah, so again, just sitting around and thinking, how can we continue to use these stuff, to advocate, and then also just to declare the truth of God's word. And so, the first 6 colorways of the new trainer that I was talking about, they're gonna come out, and then kind of on the heels of that, we're gonna come out with 3 new colorways, and one of them is gonna be a life colorway, and it'll be our life shoe, kind of a stand for life shoe. And we'll be giving monetary value from the shoe back to different nonprofit organizations. We'll talk after about what you're doing as well with Students for Life and all that stuff. And so yeah, and so it's going to have Jeremiah 1 and 5 on it. That says, "Before you were in the mother's womb, I knew you." And so I think that just speaks to God being the author of life. And the colorway will most likely be kind of a mixture of baby blue and pink to kind of speak to life, and the duality of the sexes and everything like that. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited for the advocation. I'm excited for people to be able to wear it and walk around and just to declare the truth in love.
This is so exciting. I mean, I love all of this for you. I love supporting Unitis. I love that you have this brand that people can go out and buy and wear their values, because I know too many of us, for the sake of convenience, a lot of times spend with brands that don't stand for our values and actively give to things that oppose our values and tear them down. And it's, one of the quickest ways that we can make a difference is, hey, spend spend your money with the people that actually like you. Spend your money for the people who are fighting for the same things that you are fighting for. When it comes to your book and everything, where can people find your book? This is obviously your story from being a young boy to now in the
Yeah.
NBA, and what you did and why you stand. And where can people find this? And what do you want them to know from it?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think Amazon is still the best place to get the book right now. I think we're working on me signing a bunch and being able to sell them on the Unitis website so people can get
Oh,
signed copies
fun.
of it. But yeah, so the biggest thing about my story and the book is that I know that I'm not the main character in terms of God was able to take, like I talked about being at Florida State and on anxiety medication. I am not somebody who would have done what I've done if it was just left up to me. I would have ran in the opposite direction or just kind of acquiesced and said, "Hey, I'm going to get through this moment and kneel like everybody else, even if I had other convictions." But it's simply been the truth of who Christ is and the transformative power of his grace and his mercy and his love that has gotten me to the place, and the people around me. Obviously, a huge honor to my pastor and my wife and the church community and my family, everybody that has supported me and encouraged me to be who God has created me to be. That has gotten me to this point. And so the book really does, it shares that truth that no matter who you are, no matter anything that you've done, anything that you've been through, God can and will use you if you allow him to. And it's I like that it's not about me. It's not about how great Jonathan Isaac is or how bold or how courageous he is. It's simply about God can take somebody like this and make them into somebody like this.
Amen. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining the show. I've been so looking forward to this moment, and I am really excited for people to hear it, especially my son, because I know he's a big fan, and my dad,
Awesome.
because they love you so much. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much, Christine. We'll talk after. I appreciate you.
Thank you.